Hey everybody, our group decided to do their PowerPoint over performance appraisals. The group consisted of me, Ashley Alonso, Ma Burgess, Hiromi Hodgman, and Stacy Holcomb. Performance appraisals, by definition, is the systemic evaluation of the performance of the employees and to understand the abilities of a person for future growth and development. Some of the history that goes along with performance appraisals includes formal performance appraisal, which has its origins in Frederick Winslow Taylor's 1911 Time and Motion work. There's also the theory of X and Y from 1960 that was introduced to categorize employees, where X is income justification exercises and Y is cooperative exercises. Currently, the Y employee model uses performance appraisals to develop skills and talent. There's all different types of performance appraisals. First, there is a type of rating scale that one can use, which is just a scale to kind of grade the work quality. Next would be a more essay type of performance appraisal, where a supervisor would write kind of a paragraph or a paper kind of outlining an employee's strengths, weaknesses, goals, and objectives for that specific employee. There's also results-oriented, which would be more of a metric-based performance appraisal method that really focuses on work outcome. There's also more of a self-assessment for the employee themselves, where the individual would rate their job performance on how they did. There's also a peer assessment, so others can be rated kind of from a group. There's also a 360-degree feedback assessment, so that would include kind of everybody, the individual, the supervisor, and also the peers. And then there's also a negotiated appraisal, which utilizes a mediator. Some of the advantages of using performance appraisals would include, possible promotion, some compensation. Those two could kind of probably go hand in hand. The development of the employee, always a good thing, especially in nursing. We're always looking to kind of further and develop different things for our practice. Selection validation, as well as communication and motivation. I think communication is a key important because it'd be a good way to open up communication between your peers, your supervisor, your kind of look in on yourself as far as that self-assessment rating tool. So lots of good advantages for using performance appraisals. There's also a performance appraisal assessment tool out there known as the PAAT. This tool ensures performance appraisal system requirements, procedures, forms, and cycles comply with the law and OPM regulations. It also makes sure performance-based job elements are linked to the agency's strategic plan, and that is communicated in the annual reports to Congress. And it's also a valid weighted formula, make sure it's in place to create summary ratings for performance. It also ensures goals are consistent across programs and offices, which is important because consistency is always important. OPM consultants can also provide a general briefing to agency officials and human resources personnel on the performance appraisal program or the system evaluation results and provide recommendations on how to better comply with the PAAT criteria. Some problems associated with performance appraisals would be that there is a lack of consistency in the evaluation process among management. So like I said, consistency is always important. If you have different managers that want to do different ways of evaluating your performance, that can kind of not be a good way of keeping things consistent across the board with every employee in every unit or every place. It's also got a problem with the evaluation criteria if it's not tied to measurable outcomes. So if you don't have any sort of way of measuring the outcome of the performance, then you don't really have a measure of if it's better, worse, what have you, the same. And then some employers use performance appraisals as a method of kind of weeding out low performers, which is probably not a good method of practice among employers. It should be a way of kind of increasing your employees' confidence and their motivation and pride in their work and so on and so forth. So some current practice applications in nursing leadership and management would be performance appraisals used to assess a job performance in relation to an organization's objectives, goals, and targets over a specific time period. And then in nursing, the goals and targets are geared towards patient safety, patient satisfaction, staff retention, and improved workplace environment. All of those things in nursing are super important, not only to staff, but also patient and patient care and the quality of all of those. So also, performance appraisal process is used by bosses or supervisors to convey their satisfaction towards an employee's performance during the year, or to speak one-on-one with an employee who might be performing below standards in order to help them figure out how they can improve their performance. So this is a good way of, if the employee is not performing up to par, then this would be a good way to say, hey, you're kind of falling short a little bit in the leadership aspect. What kind of things can we work on for you to become a better leader amongst other nurses on the unit? That sort of thing. Or to give them praises, say, hey, you're not performing well in this area, but you're doing great in this area. So, kind of give that praise, yet, find something or a goal to work on in addition to that. So the future of performance appraisals includes, how performance management systems don't really work today. The traditional performance appraisal models are rooted in specializing in optimizing discrete work tasks. These models actually date back more than a century to, the Frederick W. Taylor era for performance appraisals. Managers and staff alike too often view performance management as time-consuming, excessively subjective, demotivating, and ultimately unhelpful, according to Ewenstein, Hancock, and Calm. Companies are actually rethinking performance appraisals. Big technology companies such as Apple, Dell, and Microsoft have actually led the way in rethinking performance appraisals. According to Capelli and Tavis, firms are replacing annual reviews with frequent informal check-ins between managers and employees. And then, got a reevaluation of what constitutes an employee performance. So again, some companies are kind of rethinking that by focusing specifically on an individual who's a step away from average at either the high or low end of performance, rather than focusing more on the individuals, the bulk of the employees in the middle. And then the mechanism of performance determining compensation being dismantled. Actually, some companies are kind of severing that link between compensation and performance. If you do well, you get compensated for that. Some probably still do that, but some are actually kind of doing away with it. So good or bad thing, I'm not sure. Some suggestions for performance appraisals would be, determine what motivates today's workforce. Some researchers, such as Dan Pink, say that the things which really motivate people to perform well are things like autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I think those are really good things. 3 things that I know would motivate me. You don't want someone kind of micromanaging you. You want to be a master at what you do, and you want to kind of have purpose within your job or your work. So kind of getting that link between performance and compensation allows companies to worry less about tracking, rating, and their consequences, and more about building capabilities and inspiring employees to stretch their skills and aptitudes. So all good things. Also kind of more on the lines of frequent coaching as opposed to that yearly evaluation. Maybe getting rid of that of it. Well, maybe not getting rid of it completely, but not solely relying on it. Kind of doing more of that one-on-one check-in, like we talked about just a little bit ago. According to Uenstein and Hancock and Com, without great and frequent coaching, it's difficult to set goals flexibly and often to help employees stretch their jobs, or to have give people greater responsibility and autonomy while demanding more expertise and judgment from them. And then lastly, we also need to focus on what is needed in the future and not really what has already kind of taken place. An employee's feeling of purpose within an organization can be a driving force, like we discussed just a second ago, and can kind of directly relate to their performance on the jobs. So in summary, about performance appraisals would be, the performance appraisal is a systemic evaluation of the performance of employees and to understand their abilities of a person for future growth and development. In the current nursing practice, performance appraisal is used to assess a job performance in relation to an organization's objectives, goals, and targets. In nursing, the goal and targets are geared more towards patient safety, patient satisfaction, staff retention, and improved workplace environment. However, these models date back more than a century, so performance management systems don't really work in current nursing practice. It needs some rethinking and reevaluation to focus on what is needed in the future and not what has already taken place. Here is a list of our references, our sources. Another list of them. I hope you enjoyed our presentation, and thank you very much for listening.